This is Nate McGachy, Executive Director of Arts North Carolina. This video will review the Arts North Carolina 2023 legislative requests for the North Carolina General Assembly, specifically around Arts Day 2023 happening in Raleigh on April 17th and 18th. Now, the first thing that all Arts Day attendees should do, or really all arts advocates in North Carolina should do, is go to the advocacy mobile site. This site has been designed to have everything that you need, not only for the Arts Day conference and legislative day, but also for advocacy all year long. In the advocacy toolkit section, there'll be a review of the requests, talking points, and other fact sheets, as well as a spot to report your visit. In the conference day section, there will be a schedule for the entire day of the conference, as well as sponsor listings and other information important for the conference day. And in the legislative day section, there'll be a schedule for that day, maps of the legislative building, more information about the caucus, and legislators from all districts across North Carolina. It really is a tool that everyone should have. There are other resources available apart just from this video. There's the legislative request, which we also call a leave behind, because we do leave it behind with the legislator when we're meeting with them. And we're going to be focusing a lot on that document today. There's also a couple other fact sheets in the advocacy toolkit, one that focuses on nonprofit arts in North Carolina and their economic impact and impact on the community, and the Why the Arts Matter in North Carolina fact sheet that compares information about the arts and the economic information about the arts in North Carolina with national information, so you can kind of get the context there. But also at the Arts NC website, there's a lot more links and information to give you as many resources on arts and arts education as you could possibly want. Also, there are several short training videos available on the website that can walk you through the steps of how to schedule meetings, how to have meetings with legislators or lead those meetings if you're leading a group, as well as Advocacy 101 for a little bit of a deeper dive into advocacy. So this is the first page of our legislative request document, or leave behind. And this, as you can see, lists our main legislative asks for the arts in this year. And it also provides some information and facts to put this into context. This is just the first of 4 pages, and we're going to be stepping through this in this video. If you're setting up a meeting, you want to make sure you email this document ahead of time, and also afterwards as a follow-up. Now in Raleigh on April 18th, we will have printed copies of this that you can take and leave at your legislative meetings. But you might want to follow up with the email and attach this document as well, which you can download from our website so that they have the digital copy as well. Finally, keep in mind that your job during these meetings is not only to, it's not only, or not really at all, to just recite the information that's on this page, but that this information is meant to put your stories into context. And really, it's about the experiences that you have with the arts and why they're important to you that is meaningful to the legislator. And this just outlines the request that you're trying to tie those narratives to, and also gives some information to sort of help build a story and put your story into a greater context. Now, our first request is $3.5 million recurring, so that it will happen every year, an increase for all North Carolina Arts Council grants in all 100 counties. And the first thing we want to look at is, how do we stack up? How does the North Carolina Arts Council and its funding, not only for grants, but for operations, stack up with the rest of the states in our region? So if you look at the per capita appropriation in FY23 for North Carolina, it's 86 cents. That's including grants and as well as the operations for the North Carolina Arts Council. Now, the regional average for funding among our 9-state Southeastern region is $1.13. Our neighbor to the south in South Carolina, $2.19. And Florida is at $2.74. So we're putting this in context with the legislators so they can see that we need to invest more in order to be competitive within our region, to attract talent and businesses, not just within the arts, but other business as well. Now, this graph can help to tell the story of the financial history of the funding for the North Carolina Arts Council grants. You can see those blue bars at the bottom are the allocation that's been provided by the North Carolina state government for the grant appropriations. Those green bars at the top there in FY21 is that 9.4 million CARES allocation. And then in FY23 and FY24, that's the ARPA allocation, the American Rescue Plan dollars, $15 million spread out over 2 years. So that's that federal money that helped us through the pandemic. And that yellow line charts inflation, that yellow dotted line, and the green dotted line is where grant funding would be if it was $1 for the arts, if $1 for per capita grant funding. Now, we already discussed that getting up to $1 per capita would put the funding for the entire agency at $1.11, which basically matches that regional average. Another thing that you can point out is that, we've been talking about $1 per capita funding since 2017, since fiscal year 18. And since then, even though we saw that $1 million increase in FY23 in grassroots funding, that $1 million increase in funding is only barely matching inflation over the last 5 years since before the pandemic. So we really need to see an additional investment as well. Lastly, we have to consider that the North Carolina General Assembly and the North Carolina Arts Council really stabilize the entire arts industry by investing those CARES and those American Rescue Plan funds. And as a result of that, the North Carolina Arts Council awarded 62% more grants in fiscal year 23 than they were before the pandemic, a 62% increase. That's a huge amount. And 39% of those increases were to grantees that had never received a North Carolina Arts Council grant before of any kind. And a lot of those grantees, many of them, were in rural and underserved communities. So it's really a whole new universe of grantees that the Arts Council is able to reach as a result of those additional investments from the federal dollars. So when we come back to this grant, we can see that red arrow there, we have to drop that funding all the way down to the current state allocations. That's going to be drastic. So we really need to have that 3.5 million investment so that we can continue to support our new rural and underserved grant partners, and just avoid that fiscal cliff and have more of a soft landing as we head into the next several years, as the industry is still recovering from the pandemic. Now, a few other points you can use is certainly the information from the arts and culture sector. Now, this is for-profit and nonprofit, and this report comes out of the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. We really bounced back since the pandemic in 2021. This sector generated $20.2 billion in North Carolina, making up over 3% of the state's GDP, over 125,000 jobs, which is 2.6% of all North Carolina employment, and provided $10.5 billion in compensation. So really, so the arts and culture is not a small industry. It really takes up a lot of the total economic impact across the state. That's also a good idea while you're having these conversations to talk about the North Carolina Arts Council, the fact that they serve all 100 counties. And we really want to stress that need for them to equitably serve all 100 counties. Provide industry leadership that's crucial for support, and the fact that they have 50 years of experience and how necessary that was and vital that was to respond to the pandemic over the last several years, to administer the funding and training and expertise as needed. Because the legislators are going to be allocating this funding to the North Carolina Arts Council, and that then will be granted out to organizations. So you want to make sure that they feel good about the government agency that they're appropriating funding to. Now, our second request is H-136, the Arts Proficiency High School Diploma Endorsement. Now, if you're talking to a House legislator, you can just thank them because the House passed it unanimously. Everybody in the room, 114 House members, voted for this. But we need action in the Senate so that it could come out of Rules Committee, move into the Education Committee, and eventually get a full Senate vote. So what is it we're asking for? Well, this is an endorsement that can be awarded to all high school graduates that would accompany their high school diploma for all graduates that have completed 4 arts credits with an unweighted GPA of 3.0 or higher, just for the 4 arts credits. And then additionally, they need to engage in 4 hours of extracurricular arts activities. There is no allocation needed. The folks at the Department of Public Instruction, we will set up the framework that will be required for the endorsement, and then local school boards will actually determine the eligible extracurricular arts activities that can be activities, but they can't be for school credit. And that can include being involved in the community theater or other local arts nonprofits. So why do we want legislators to support that? Well, first of all, creativity is considered to be one of the most important skills for employers by 72% of business leaders. And really the thing to bring this home is that low-income students, and we're talking about those from the lowest quartile of income, those students from the lowest quartile of income level, who are involved in the arts throughout all 4 years of high school are 5 times less likely to drop out of high school and 2 times more likely to obtain a college degree. And that's really the fact that you can use to bring this point home to the legislator, that this is something that we want to see. Again, the House has already passed this, so we really want to focus on this particular request for our North Carolina senators. Our third request is H-498. And now this is a bill that would direct local school districts to provide music and visual art instruction to all K-5 students in North Carolina, all those students, all elementary school students in North Carolina. On average, 1 out of every 20 public school students does not have both music and visual art instruction. And while that's great for the 95% of the students that do, we really want to take care of that kid over there in the corner that doesn't have both music and visual art to enrich their education. This bill would direct local education agencies, or LEAs, school boards, to provide both music and visual arts instruction by a certified music or visual art teacher for no less than 30 minutes every 5 instructional days, and to no more than a standard classroom size for every grade level. So that we're not talking about 500 kids in a room learning music, that we're really talking about a reasonably sized class by a certified instructor teaching the standard course of study in music and visual art. Of the 630,000 K-5 public school students that we have right now, 96% of them are enrolled in music and 94% in visual art. So it really is a small amount of students. Particularly when we consider that research shows that the arts increase student engagement, which improves student behavior and addresses things like learning loss and mental health, which are so vital. And we're dealing with so many challenges right now, particularly as we come back from the pandemic. Now, your legislator might ask you how you expect to pay for all this. And the truth is that the General Assembly already allocated money for this in its SL 2018-2. There's over $250 million extra that was allocated for what they call program enhancement teachers. And that means music, visual art, PE teachers, etc. Specifically for K-5 students, 1 teacher for every 191 students. So this funding has already been passed in the law. This is just a law to direct the school districts to use that funding for arts education as it was intended. Finally, our last request is 1.5 for A+ schools of North Carolina over the next 2 or 3 years. And this is a real opportunity. Now, if you don't know, A+ schools is a whole school arts integration based reform model that is operated within the North Carolina Arts Council. It was actually founded in Winston-Salem in North Carolina in 1995 by the Keenan Institute for the Arts, but has expanded to states all across the United States, as well as to other countries as well. And it shows real student engagement as well as teacher satisfaction in studies that are being recently done. And there's a real opportunity here where a private foundation that had already been supporting this program to the tune of about $300,000 every year had said that in addition to that, if the state of North Carolina would contribute $1.5 million over 3 years, that they would match that $1.5 million dollar for dollar. Whether or not that's $500,000 a year or $750,000 over 2 years, but that they would match that. And then in addition to that, if the state made that investment, they would put in an additional $500,000 over that 3 years to match other private donations. So that all told, when you look at the small amount of money, the $85,000 that the state puts in now, plus the normal $300,000 a year that foundation has been supporting A+ schools, and then you add these investments with the state funding and the match, we're talking about over $5 million in public and private funding together over 3 years, really enabling A+ schools to build a much stronger foundation and to expand the number of schools that they can bring into the fold, as well as the resources they can provide across the entire school system in North Carolina. So again, make sure that your legislators are aware of this, and that we want to see that in both the House version of the budget, which is already there, and the Senate version of the budget as well. Again, please make sure that you check out the Advocacy mobile site, where you can find links to all of this information and all of the resources that you're going to need for Arts Day. And thank you so much for joining us on video, and we will see you at Arts Day.